Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Eagle Pass ISD. This is actually a special meeting, so we are calling this special meeting to order. Today being Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. It is 12:02 p.m., and we call this meeting to order. We will go through the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll go roll call. Mr. Mijares?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Mijares. We will now go through roll call. We have Ms. Hilda P. Martinez, Vice President present, Mr. Christopher Hiller, Secretary present, Mr. Victor Perry, Trustee present, Mr. Morris Lipson, Trustee present, Mr. Jaime C. Barrera, Trustee present, Mr. Tom Gonzalez, Trustee present. We have our Superintendent of Schools present. We have Ms. Valeria Carrillo, our Attorney, and myself, Jorge Barrera, present. At this time, we will move to district reports and presentations, and we will have a presentation. Thank you. We'll have a presentation on possible facilities improvement funds. We had Mr. David Gonzalez, our financial advisor, but he had some problems in McAllen, so we have Mr. Blake. Robert, yes. So, go ahead, sir.
Well, good afternoon, Superintendent and Board. I don't have a very good impression of David Gonzalez, so I'll just be me today. But thank you for your time and appreciate the interest in this topic. David does regret not being able to be on. We had some pretty wild windstorms here in Austin that grounded planes for several hours. So one of those just extraordinary events, and he does apologize for not being able to attend, but we'll keep this moving. So we have some information on a potential bond election, and I believe that y'all have hard copies of that presentation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then I will just reference each slide as we go. But very excited to be here today and to talk with you all about this important topic. So with that, we'll get into it. The first page is just about our firm. I think you know David Gonzalez well, but we're part of a larger firm called PFM. So we're financial advisors across Texas as well as the nation. I've worked with David for about 5 years now. You know, he has a long history with Eagle Pass ISD. And so it means a lot to him to be able to work with you all. I am a managing director and partner with PFM out of our Austin office. I went to the firm about 10 years. We represent a number of districts across Texas, Eagle Pass ISD being one, Pete ISD, Somerset ISD, all the way up to Austin ISD, Leander ISD. So schools that are sort of on the smaller side and on the bigger side. And every election is very important. So we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable, that there's a sense of transparency, and that you all understand everything we're thinking about when we talk about capacity and what that means. This is the big decision for the community. So on the second slide, we have a few comments just about interest rate environment. There have been lots of headlines around the cost of infrastructure going up, inflation going up, and the cost of borrowing being high. And while that is true in some regards, so as you very well heard, mortgage rates are still at a 7% range or high 6% range. They've been stubbornly high. That's a result of the Fed, who made decisions to begin increasing their short-term rates to combat inflation, and has not been able to reduce that Federal Reserve rate as quickly as they had hoped because inflation does remain sticky. But that being said, tax-exempt borrowing rates, or the way that school districts borrow, still remains actually fairly reasonable. So on a 30-year school bond, for example, today, that would be between 4 and 4.5% on an interest rate basis. So I give you this sort of information so that if there's questions in the community around, well, rates are high and why would we borrow now? There is a difference in what headlines say about taxable rates and treasury rates and mortgage rates, for example, versus tax exempt borrowing rates, which still remain attractive. Certainly not as low as we were 3 years ago, coming out of the pandemic when Fed had a near 0% rate. But it's not the 10% rates we may have been borrowing at a decade ago or two. So I want to give you that perspective. To go to page 3, and this is really sort of the first key thing to be thinking about. So as you think about a bond election and all of the events that go into that, it starts with this. This is a very important conversation. It's then leading into more conversations with your community. It's a community decision. Ultimately, we're talking about potentially a November election. And so the far right column, which has listed November election dates, are the things that you should be keeping in mind as a board and governing body as you prepare for this election. So election day is Tuesday, November the 4th. What we would work towards is a Monday, August the 18th, board approval to pass an order calling the bond election. You have to do it by a certain date in August to hit that. So backing up from there, a lot of work would have already gone into that. So it starts with this. It's potentially convening a citizens bond committee. It's engaging your architects to determine what projects are on the table. And it's then conversing with your financial advisor to ensure that whatever projects are floated can fit within some of the tax rate constraints and capacity that we're going to show you here in a few slides. So from a timing standpoint, you would call for the election in August, the election occurring in November. But leading up to that August date, there will be lots of work in community discussions around what goes into the bond and how a bond works. I'll pause there for a second in case there are any questions on kind of the timeline consideration.
I think we're good.
Okay, great. So we talked a little bit about the process of issuing a bond. This may not be all that foreign to some of you, but it begins with this exact meeting here, engaging with your finance team. So it's the financial advisor, PFM, it's David, it's me. It's also your bond counsel. That's a law firm that represents the district's interests as it relates to making sure election orders are conforming with state law. Any measures that you consider on the ballot are done so properly. It's working with your community on a bond package, and then it's calling the bond election. After you call the bond election, between that and the election, it's holding informational sessions. It's holding sort of public events around what the bond will do for the community. There is a very fine line that you'll have to walk in terms of providing information, but not advocacy around the bond. As advocacy can be deemed to be illegal, no election can occur, but information is fine. So just things that we'll be thinking about as we progress towards a potential election date in November. The next slide is titled Sample Measure. That just shows you what an example bond proposition and how bond language would read on the ballot. And so in this case, we've shown you just a hypothetical $100 million bond ballot language measure that sort of speaks to the projects. It outlines the kind of the terms of the bonds that would be issued to not to exceed 40 years. But you could issue those in one or more series of bonds. and so forth. So this is just sample legal language that we're trying to familiarize you with, so that when we get to that point, it would make sense to you. And then over on the right is actually the example proposition language that a voter would see. So if they go in and look at the voter booth and the ballot measure, the actual language they would see as they read and decide a yes or no on the bond. Some things that the state legislature now requires, if there are specific projects, those may need to be broken out by different propositions. So, for example, if you want to construct a football stadium, it has to be its own proposition. If you want to construct an auditorium or teacher housing, those all have to be on their own propositions, separate and apart from a general proposition. Another example would be a performing arts center that is a standalone facility that isn't also inside of an existing or proposed school. So that's some analysis that we'll do with you and your bond counsel to determine if it's one proposition or if it has to be multiple propositions from a state law standpoint.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So if you're breaking down into the propositions, it could be that, let's say you have 10, 8 pass and 2 don't pass, so you can fund those?
That's right. And actually, that's a very common occurrence where we see more likely 3 propositions as an example, and perhaps 2 pass, and then one doesn't. And so you have the authority to issue bonds for the 2 that passed, but not the 1 that didn't.
That's good. Okay.
Good question. The other thing that we wanted to highlight is sort of the ability of a potential voter and taxpayer to actually go on a website, school district, appraisal district, and put in their home value to then determine what their annual cost would be from a tax bill standpoint if the bond were to pass. And so this is actually a tool that we think provides really the utmost transparency, because it provides information. If I have a $200,000 house, after taking into consideration the homestead exemption, it's now $100,000. What would my actually annual tax bill be as a result of this bond? So we encourage this to be put on either the district's website and or the appraisal district's website to be able to show the actual bill impact to a taxpayer. On the next slide that's titled Existing Debt Allotment Program, what we wanted to highlight here is that the district does still receive some state funding for debt service under the existing debt allotment program because of your property wealth status, so total taxable value divided by number of students. And so you have received EDA support for your existing bonds. That has been declining as your taxable values have grown at a faster pace than enrollment. You've become wealthier. But we do know the EDA is a potential funding source for your new bond. So we've run analysis to show both ways, with EDA and without EDA. Again, EDA is existing debt allotment from the state to support your bond. And as the next slide shows, again, because of your growing wealth compared to your enrollment, the state support for your debt service has been declining over time. And so again, we wanted to sort of acknowledge that without knowing what the future will hold from a tax-based growth and enrollment standpoint, that this has been trending downward. Now, the good news is that means that you're growing wealthier, and so you'll have more actual local property tax dollars to offset any changes in EDA. I just want to point that out about how you're funded from a bond capacity standpoint. And it does go without saying, but I want to stress this: bonds are only paid back by the I&S portion of your debt of your tax rate. So you have two components. You have your M&O tax rate that funds teacher salaries, the cost of operating schools, et cetera. And then you have your debt service tax rate. Only your debt service tax rate is used for bond payments. You can't you can't use M&O. You shouldn't use M&O money for bond payments. It really is only the debt service tax rate. The next slide, past bond elections, just shows you some recent comparable ISDs and their successful bond elections, the amounts authorized, and the comparable tax rates over on the far right column. The next slide, Eagle Pass maintains A and A+ credit ratings. So what I do want to stress is that you have a strong bond rating. This is akin to a strong credit score on a personal level. So why this slide is important is it will allow you to achieve a better rate in the bond markets because you have a good bond rating. Some of the things the rating agencies talk about in their reports about you all is, again, well-managed financial operations and solid spending flexibility. So your finance team is doing a wonderful job of managing your budget and your reserve levels that are healthy, and then low debt costs because of not a lot of bonds on your books currently. A couple of things that they're biased against are the low income levels in the area, and then enrollment trends. So we'll certainly work through the process on the rating side. This is an important part of the bond issue process. The other thing is, if you have your bonds approved by voters, we would also apply for what's called the Texas Permanent School Fund Guarantee, which essentially means that your bonds, if you are approved by that PSF, are able to price a AAA rating because the state's PSF program guarantees your payments to investors. So that's a win-win for the district and for investors because it allows you to price essentially for the AAA rating because of the PSF guarantee. On the next slide, this is just an overview of your current debt position. Again, very minimal debt outstanding. You have two series of bonds. You have a Series 2019 tax note. That's actually paid back by your M&O dollars. That has about $5.1 million outstanding on it with a final maturity in 2034. And then you have some 2016 bonds that were refunding bonds or refinanced older bonds that were authorized by voters. Those have about $31.1 million in principal outstanding. And those go out through 2038. And those are actually paid back by your debt service tax rate. And then the graph, the gray and the blue bars show the annual principal and interest cost of the district every year through 2038. So the brown bars are principal, the blue bars are interest, and then combined are your payments on those two bonds above. So to cut to the chase on what you probably care the most about is for the potential capacity and as it relates to a bond election at different amounts. And so we have analysis that we'll show you in these next two slides, or next three slides, excuse me. But essentially what we came up with at a very high level is that based on certain assumptions and based on current state law, $90 million tax impact would be 9.5 pennies, or 11 pennies if we did not get any state funding for debt service. The higher scenario, 120 million, without state debt service aid, that tax impact will be 15 pennies, and with that state debt support, it'd be 13 pennies. And then in the middle, 100 million, you have a 12 penny tax rate on the INS side without state support, and only 10.7 pennies with state support. And so that's a high level summary of sort of the capacity. And so if we work our way to the next slide, we kind of run through how we model capacity. And these numbers are very small, and I'll try to avoid going into the weeds too much, but just to navigate you for the numbers folks in the room, column 1 is your fiscal year. Column 2 is the estimated taxable value of the district. Column 3 is the assumed growth rate of the taxable value. Now, we understand that you've seen really robust tax base growth of double digits, 10 to 15% over the past few years. We wanted to be somewhat conservative in our forecasting. So we stuck with 5% annual growth over the next 5 years as our base case. Column 4 is the existing tax-supported debt service on that 2016 bond. And then columns 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 10 are the future payments on new bonds to be issued. So you have principal, interest, and debt service in issue number 1, and then principal, interest, and debt service in issue number 2. I would stress that just because you authorize 90 million or authorize 100 million doesn't mean you'll be able to spend all that money and issue bonds all at once. So it's very common that we have clients that issue bonds in different installment amounts over several years. So depending on your procurement processes for these contracts, depending on the type of projects you're funding, it could be that we have 3 bond issuances every year for 3 years. It could be that we have 2. It could be that we have 1. It just depends on, I think, types of projects and the timing of how you let those projects. So columns 11 and 12 then show estimated state debt service support for your bonds. And then column 13 is columns 13 and 14. 13 is sort of local frozen taxes, and then 14 is the net debt service for the district that would need to be paid back by debt service tax rates. And so column 15 and 16 is the required INS tax rate, and then the change in the INS tax rate. So for required, we would need again about 11 pennies or so without EDA to support things. Scenario 2, 100 million. Similar arrangement, just showing you higher issuance amount, and you can see that the tax rate impact would need to be again closer to 12 pennies without state debt service support, and then at the 120 million, that would be closer to 15 pennies. So this is how we think about bond capacity analysis. We can adjust this analysis as needed, but this is sort of what we have in front of us to help you think through what your appetite as a board would be for bond capacity, and then selecting projects with these constraints in mind. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Those are sort of my formal remarks. That was a lot of information, short amount of time. So certainly want to make sure everyone's comfortable.
Board have any questions? Nope. We're good. We appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time. Again, David does apologize for not being here. I hope I acquitted myself as his partner on this well, and we will talk to you again very soon.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
Okay. Take care.
All right. We now move to number 2, General Information of the Facilities Improvement Committee. We have the main thing that we're trying to do with the committee is to install a committee or start a committee so we can start looking at the infrastructure, our facilities, things that are needed throughout the district, to be quite honest. So anything that we need at this point, one of the things that we're gonna do is get together. We're gonna need the team, which is, as Mr. Roberts had mentioned, you have your bond group, your financial advisors, and then we'll have to pick a architect firm to go with that. And then we set the committee up, and then we go through, maybe do tours and see what each campus is really needing, and then we'll have to make a decision there, because obviously if we try to do everything, it'll be in the 500 million range or so, but we're not going to have those kinds of funds, so we're going to try to do as most as we can. Mr. Mijares, anything you'd like to throw in?
Yes, Enroli is going to do the framework of the committee. We want to establish a committee of community members. That way we have true input, and also we want to assess every single campus. I think that in this bond, we need to focus on academics. So I think that that's something that we need to share with the community, that everything's going to be about academics. So that
And I think that's very important.
that's very important. That way we don't have to do propositions or anything like that, like the bond council told us right now. So if you guys have any questions, but Rolly will present just a brief framework for the committee.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mijares, Superintendent Mijares, Board President Barrera, respective board members. Just to give a quick overview of the facility improvement plan, also known as a 5-year plan, and the committee that will assist us in prioritizing, assessing, and making recommendations to the board. I know we have an array of experiences out here with our board members. Some of you might have been part of previous committees having to do with this. Others of you might be hearing this for the very first time. So we run the whole gamut. So I thought I'd give you a little purpose regarding, the purpose for the facility improvement plan, or the 5-year plan. And basically what this does is serve as a roadmap. It's our guide. It gives us direction. It identifies, prioritizes, and plans necessary upgrades or repairs to buildings or complexes. Of course, outlining the steps to maintain or enhance the functionality, the safety, and overall conditions of the facility. And as was mentioned before by a previous presenter, it doesn't often include budgets, allocations, and timelines, pretty strict timelines, in order to achieve these improvements over time. So in essence, regarding the key points about a facilities improvement plan, well, what does it include? We're looking at 4 main points from the district point of view. First of all, we want to assess the current state of our campuses, our facilities. We have some campuses that have been, that are recently new, within 10 years, let's say, and others that are a little bit more vintage, that we know very, that have been in the community for quite a while. So it does involve conducting a thorough evaluation of the existing facilities, identifying areas that need repair, maintenance, or modernization. When we went to school, paper pencil, now everybody runs around with a Chromebook and other types of technology. So just as things evolve, so must the buildings, in order to provide those necessary requirements. Well, the anticipation of future needs is also quite important. The plan should consider future operational requirements and potential growth to ensure that the facility can accommodate for the changing needs. We have certain populations also that are starting to grow, in which we also have to modify and provide accessibility to some of those special requirements that are needed. Of course, everything prioritizes around needs and budgets. So the prioritization of budgets and budgeting, it outlines the most critical improvements based on their impact, the cost, allocating funds to projects accordingly. So as was previously mentioned, my understanding is that, we could have 3, 4, 5 proposals, and the committee will assist us in assessing, making recommendations to the board, to our superintendent, so we could move forward. And then, of course, take it to our constituents to see if it meets their needs as well. Strategic planning, very important, considering the strict timelines that we have moving forward. All facility improvement plans act as a guide for decision-making regarding the facility upgrades, ensuring a coordination of district-wide approach to maintenance and improvement, and of course, financially making sure that everything is pretty much in accordance. So those are the four elements that we'll be looking at as a committee. And what would be some of the examples that the facility improvement plan may include? Well, they may include building system upgrades. As I mentioned to you, as certain needs arise, the modernization of those components also have to go in accordance in order to meet the needs. So things like replacing outdated HVAC systems, air conditioned heating systems, electrical wiring in some instances that have been in place for, in some cases, as long as the building has been in existence. Fiber optic wiring, we started with landlines to, Cat 5s, Cat 6, and that too is evolving as well. And so are the needs and the usage of that as well. Plumbing and fire safety. The district has been very proactive in allowing some of the modifications in the last few years, but there's still some gaps that also need to be incorporated as to, consideration for these plans. Accessibility requirements, modifying entrances. We're talking about building entrances, but also parking lots. In some cases, we've had parking lots also that it seems how things are getting quite expensive, but the accessibility of parking, more people are driving, there's more staff, more students, just the community and nature. And that in itself could be modifying certain types of interest. It's ramps, restrooms to comply with disability ADA requirements are also quite important, as everything is a lot more stringent nowadays. Optimizing space, the space optimization, reorganizing layouts to improve the utilization of space. You've seen this in several campuses where we might have had computer labs that might have been used years ago that have converted into classrooms, that have converted into restrooms in some cases because they are needed and required. So making sure that the layouts that we have for the space that's available, that we're using all the resources and optimizing those opportunities. Safety enhancements, as you all well know, the state has really pushed for a lot of safety measures moving forward in all of our school buildings. So interior, exterior lighting, perhaps the improvement on that. Technology infrastructure, we have cameras at our campuses now. We have access controls that do require, certain types of features to be installed. Things of that sort that are becoming our daily functions now, where it might have not been the norm before. Exterior doors, window upgrades, in some campuses, we still have windows that are perhaps not energy efficient. Plexiglass windows in some of our vintage campuses, things of that sort that might need modification or upgrades. And of course, in order to provide additional security for all of the stakeholders in the building. Perimeter fencing as well, gates, making sure that everything's enclosed and safety and has no gaps. Those are things to be considered. Energy efficient projects, luckily we did a project several years ago that really upgraded some of our campuses. However, the technology seems to evolve. What used to be energy efficient is now a standard and not as efficient anymore. So things to consider: implementing energy saving measures like LED lighting, water saving features, or simple building insulations in order to insulate the campuses a little bit better. We might also find recommendations for new construction projects or the repurposing of current buildings. This is a prime example. I think all of us remember when Austin Elementary was an elementary school. It fulfilled its purpose. And now we use it as our central office, and I'm so glad we do now, because quite obviously we wouldn't fit where we used to be before. Which takes me also to our former district service center over there on El Indio. That building was also repurposed, and it's our current EPISD police department. So other examples: the Luna building, our old high school, Eagle Pass Junior High, off Del Rio Boulevard is our current DAP building. And the kitchen that is right next to that, we've repurposed that so that it could be our centralized kitchen, which now does all of our grab and goes district-wide. So we've been very resourceful in using the resources and buildings that we have. But those might be some of the considerations that the committee might recommend to the board and to our superintendent to address district needs and growth in regards to this. So we get to the committee. So right now the committee, the Facility Improvement Committee, will consist of 14 community members that have been selected and appointed by the board. I think we're still missing one member in order to complete our 14 members at this particular time. The committee will also consist of 2 campus principals, 2 teachers, 2 parents, a district architect, which is pivotal component to the whole plan, our maintenance director, and deputy superintendent for district operations, yours truly. It'll be a total of 23 members that will constitute the Facility Improvement Committee. Looking at our first meeting, once we have all of our members, perhaps the last week of March, the first week of April, so that we could start getting the ball going. In the first meeting, I think that we do, of course, need to select a chair, that the committee does, select a chairperson, an assistant chair, vice chair, a secretary, in order to help us assist and provide those recommendations to the board, or even allow for subcommittees to be formed within the committee itself. Another thing is that our Facility Improvement Committee will be vital, most especially if the soliciting of a bond is incorporated into some of the projects, that they be the ambassadors, for lack of a better word, to inform the community of the projects and the funding that it would entail in regards to this. So in essence, this is, in a nutshell, what the Facilities Committee plan will consist of, also known as a 5-year plan, and the committee itself and the responsibilities entailed to the committee. I know we have a timeline that's rather strict. I think it'd be prudent for us to get started as quick as we can. One of the major components has to do with the district architect in assessing the buildings, providing direction, looking at our gaps and our areas of need, and then of course prioritizing whatever's necessary and come with a comprehensive plan to our superintendent and board for possible recommendations. Mr. Mijares, that's all I have, unless you all have any questions.
Any questions?
I think we're good. Eddie, have any questions from the board?
Who is the district architect of record?
Right now, for this particular component, we don't have one. I think
Okay.
it's part
That's
of
one
the
of the
agenda
things
for
we'll
today. We
discuss.
made a recommendation.
That's one of the things we'll discuss.
Yes, we made a recommendation and awaiting approval.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. At this time, the Board of Trustees of the Eagle Pass Independent School District will convene in closed session as authorized by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to deliberate upon the following matters. The board will consult with its attorney regarding legal issues relating to new construction projects and procurement matters pursuant to TGC 551.071. Do I have a motion to convene in closed session? So moved by Trustee Barrera, second by Trustee Perry. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. The time is 12:40 and the date is Wednesday, March 5th, 2025, and the Board of Trustees is now in closed session. No action will be taken in closed session. Figure it out. Okay. Mr. Lipson, oh, Jaime, Mr. Lipson. Want to say it? All right. The time is 1:22 p.m. The date is Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. And the Board of Trustees of the Eagle Pass Independent School District is now in open session, and we will move to item number 5, actually 6. Consider to take appropriate action on the request to conduct a 5-year facilities improvement plan. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the administration's request to conduct a 5-year district facilities improvement plan by appointing a facilities improvement committee to begin the process.
We have a motion by Mr. Lipson. Do we have a second? Second by Trustee Gonzalez. I do want to say time is of the essence for this, so we need to move on this kind of quick and have timelines on this. So this is an important project that we're looking at, so we need to really look into it and move. There's nothing else. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We now move to number 7, which is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Trustee Martinez. Second? Second by Trustee Hiller. Trustee Barrera. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. The time is 1:23 and this meeting is adjourned.